picture this right now. It is the middle of June. You have your swimsuit on, an ice cream cone in your hand, fully ready for the absolute perfect summer vacation. The vibes are immaculate. And then you step outside into a massive, blinding blizzard. Freezing. Nature has officially forgotten how seasons actually work. Now you are trapped indoors, shivering uncontrollably. The pantry is completely empty. You are starving. And suddenly, at absolutely no point before today, you look at your lovely neighbor and genuinely think, dinner. But here we are. Let's talk about the sky breaking. In 1816, humanity collectively experienced what happens when the planet's thermostat completely malfunctions. The year without a summer. Imagine waking up in July and shoveling snow. You would probably assume the sun was broken. You would look up. But the problem wasn't above us. It was beneath us. Genuinely stop and think about that geologically for a second. We build our little houses, we plant our little crops, and we act like we are entirely in charge of this floating rock. We are not. Earth is in charge, and occasionally it sneezes. In 1815, a volcano named Mount Tambora erupted. It wasn't just a pop, it was a cataclysmic, completely insane explosion that essentially acted like a broken air conditioner for the entire globe. It blasted so much ash and sulfur into the stratosphere that it physically blocked out the sun. A geologic blackout. Millions of tons of debris just chilling in the atmosphere, bouncing sunlight back into space. The planet's heating system was entirely unplugged by a very angry mountain. The sheer scale of this event is genuinely hard to overstate. A single mountain threw a massive tantrum and the entire planet plunged into a bizarre freezing twilight for an entire year. That is exactly where we are on the food chain. Nature hits the off switch and we just have to sit in the dark and deal with it. We are so incredibly fragile as a species. A volcano burps and our entire agricultural system collapses almost overnight. Which brings us to a genuinely unsettling question right now. What actually happens when you turn off the sun? The short answer is hunger. The long answer is way more interesting, slightly terrifying, and it involves hunger, absolute madness, and massive global street riots. We really like to think of human civilization as this perfectly grand, unshakable monument. We have art, we have complex legal systems, we have philosophy. But it turns out the line between a polite society and an absolute apocalyptic nightmare for everyone is shockingly thin. It is exactly a few degrees of temperature. That is it. That is the whole barrier. When the temperature plummeted, the crops did not just struggle. They died, completely. Across Europe and North America, the entire agricultural systems completely flatlined. No sunlight means no food. No food means famine. And famine means the absolute unraveling of everything we call human decency. Millions of people were starving. The streets descended into utter chaos. Massive violent riots broke out everywhere. Panic, desperation. You have neighbors fighting each other for basic scraps of bread. Entire communities collapsing because nature decided to turn off the lights. It is genuinely terrifying how quickly we revert back to our absolute basest instincts when the pantry is empty. The polite facade drops. The survival wiring kicks in. We went from civilized citizens to desperate animals in the blink of a geological eye. A total societal breakdown. Just hunger, violence, and freezing darkness. But here is where the story takes a wildly unexpected turn. Something else was happening. In the middle of this freezing, starving hellscape, while entire populations were literally rioting in the streets just trying to survive the week, a small group of young people were simply stuck indoors, trapped, freezing, and profoundly bored. They could not go outside because the weather was actively trying to kill everyone. So they had to find a way to entertain themselves. And their sheer absolute boredom in that dark, miserable weather did not just pass the time. It accidentally changed pop culture history forever. We always picture historical literary geniuses sitting in these beautiful rooms, just waiting for profound inspiration to strike. No, sometimes they are just incredibly bored. Enter Mary Shelley. She was not a distant, untouchable historical figure. She was just a normal young woman who was completely stuck indoors because the weather outside was genuinely apocalyptic. Think about the last time you were stuck inside your house for days because of a bad storm or a global lockdown. You watched everything. You baked. You stared at the ceiling. Now imagine doing that without the internet, while a volcanic winter is actively freezing the summer outside. The weather was so relentlessly awful, so incredibly dark and stormy, that Mary and her friends were effectively trapped inside their vacation house. They could not leave. They were slowly losing their minds. So to pass the time and cure their absolute boredom, they decided to have a simple ghost story competition. Most of us just start arguing with our roommates when we are trapped inside. Mary Shelley did something else. She sat down, channeled all that dark, gloomy, freezing energy from the broken summer outside, and she wrote Frankenstein. The undeniably bad weather literally trapped her indoors, and that very specific confinement inspired one of the greatest horror masterpieces in all human history. That is the fundamental weirdness of the human brain in adversity. The climate created actual starving monsters on the streets, but absolute boredom created a literal monster on the blank white page. Remember that perfect summer vacation from the very beginning. The ice cream, the swimsuit, the immaculate vibes, all of that, our entire modern civilized existence, is completely dependent on the planet just deciding to behave itself. We like to think we are entirely untouchable, but the truth is, our survival, our greatest art, our global culture, and our basic human decency are all held together by just a few fragile degrees of temperature. One single mountain gets angry, and suddenly half the world is violently rioting in the streets, while the other half is trapped indoors accidentally. Inventing the modern horror genre, it is a deeply humbling reality check. We are always just one bad geological day away from total chaos or accidental genius. So, if you woke up tomorrow in the middle of summer and it was snowing outside, what would you do? Would you write a classic novel? Or would you go fight for food at the supermarket? Let me know in the comments. See you very soon.